Good evening. This is Neil, W2NDG, transmitting live from the compound in Highland, starting the Overlook Mountains Sunday night Science and Technology Net. Let's pause first and see if there's any emergency or priority traffic. All right, nothing heard. And once again, this is Neil, W2NDG, and we meet here every Sunday night at 8 p.m. to discuss science and technology, not necessarily related to ham radio. And this will be, and I'll announce this again later, this will probably be the last Science and Technology Net until September 11th, at least the last regularly scheduled one. If something comes up and people want to meet here and talk, that's fine. But I'm not going to have it as a hard stop on my schedule until September. I'm taking a break from the other class that I teach at night as well, and I just like to take the summer off, and I don't think anybody is going to fault that. So if someone wants to continue in my place, they're welcome to. But for now, we're going to skip a couple of months, and we'll be back here in September. All right, let me drop. I did think of a topic tonight, and it's an odd one, but at some point I had brought up a topic one night of adhesives, and I think people were kind of skeptical how much you could talk about glue, but it ended up being a pretty lively topic and probably could have gone on to more than one net. There's a lot of technology in adhesion and a lot to talk about other ways that things stick together. So tonight, the topic is dirt. What does it mean? Two different directions with that. What is dirt as a noun? And what does it mean when something is dirty? And more important, how do we clean things? And how does that work? What's the science behind cleaning? And there's different ways to clean things. And we can go around tonight and discuss that. But we're going to talk about things like dirt and what dirt actually is. And we're going to talk about soap. We're going to talk about detergents, things like that. So anyway, we can talk about water solubility also. And, just water pressure in general. We were talking about pressure washing on the air not long ago. So all those things can come up tonight, and glad you're here. We are on the Overlook Mountain Amateur Radio Club's repeater at 146.805 megahertz with a negative shift and a PL tone of 103.5 hertz. And we are also on YouTube, and you just have to search for my call sign, W2NDG Science and Technology. W2NDG Science and Technology. Join the YouTube stream. You can chat with us on YouTube or watch it later. If you don't have time to watch tonight, you can go back to the channel and watch. If the stream looks different tonight, please let me know if there's an issue with it. I am actually using a different laptop than I normally do as an experiment here, so just wondering if it was working well. Anyway, let me reach out and see if my co-host Jim is there tonight. I didn't hear him on the 6:30 net, but Jim, K2BHM, are you around tonight?
Yes and no, Neil, K2BHM, Jim. Just got back from the nice garden party, but I got a telephone call that I got to take, so I'll be back in a few minutes. K2BHM.
All right, that's fine. I'll do a short bit of monologue here just on the subject. I did bring up some pages here just so I could discuss these things. And one of them is, let's look at the words. We always, when we talk about subjects like this, I like to start with the words themselves. So what is the definition of the word dirt? I'm not going to read all of the definitions because some of them are irrelevant to the discussion, but this is from Merriam-Webster. One of them that is relevant to tonight's discussion is a filthy or soiling substance, such as mud, dust, or grime. Okay. Loose or packed soil or sand or earth, which makes sense. And they give examples here: a mound of dirt or a dirt road. Okay. An abject or filthy state, living in dirt. Okay. The rest of it here is when we get into metaphorical parts of the word, and we can skip those. But that's, physical definition of the word as far as what we're talking about. Go on to another one. Merriam-Webster again, and this is the adjective dirty. So what does dirty mean with respect to tonight's subject? Not clean or pure. And the examples are dirty clothes, dirty fingernails. Let's see. Contaminated with infecting organisms. Well, we can get into that, but disinfecting and sterilization is definitely a topic that could fill another night. Containing impurities. And that's interesting because that's going to hit on one of the things I'm going to bring up. The rest of them here may not be related to tonight's subject, but you have things like morally clean or corrupt, morally unclean or corrupt, and so on and so forth. So we don't need those definitions tonight. But we can get into what happens beyond that. Let me grab some check-ins first. So let's see who's with us tonight. And to check into the net, you can give me your call sign, your first name, and your location. Please come now.
All right. 3 Bed control. Here is KB2 GGF in Kerhonkson. Net control. This is KD2 YRB Shane in Kerhonkson. Net control. KD2 TVS Lou in West Milford.
All right. Thanks for starting us off, guys. And Lou, thanks for logging in tonight, because if not, we would have a majority of Thompson people. Anyway, all right. So I have Paul in Rosendale, N3EYQ, Matt, KB2 GGF in Kerhonkson, Shane, KD2 YRB in Kerhonkson, and Lou, KD2 TVS in West Milford, New Jersey. And is there anybody else who would like to join us tonight? Okay, we'll check again later for check-ins, but that'll be fine because I don't want to run really late tonight. I still have a few things to do before tomorrow, so let me just see if Jim is off of his phone call. Jim, are you back yet or not? Great, that's fine. We will catch up with him in a little bit, but we can run around here. I'm not sure how to get into this with everybody, but I'll ask you each a question, I guess. How's that? And then we can discuss the science of all of this. Paul, have you ever heard the term clean dirt, and what does it mean?
dirt, no. Maybe covered with dirt, or what was the other one you were saying? Treated me like dirt. Whatever. That's pretty like that.
Well, clean dirt, which self-contradictory there, is actually a thing, and it's directly related to the science of what we're talking about, clean in one way or another. And that can be a couple of different things. It can be clean in that it doesn't contain any biologicals, at least living ones, which you could call that sterile soil. And it can be clean with respect to that it's been washed in water soluble, leaving mostly just the pit. So it is possible to have clean dirt. And that's where things get funny when we get into this topic. But all right, Matt, KV2 GGF. Let's see. Is it possible to wash things without soap or detergent?
Sure. But soap or detergent helps break the molecular bonds, but good physical scrubbing and water will do it. Water is perhaps the best solvent, may not be the fastest acting. But just real quick on when you said sci-fi movie contamination. Contamination in general can be thought of as dirt, or dirt as contamination. But yeah, cleaning without detergent or soaps is possible. There are other things that will go into solution, bicarbonates and salts and so forth, that will help break molecular bonds between the contamination and the surface. But and surfactants, there must be other surfactants. And yeah, it's all a bit beyond me. But I would say, yeah, scrub it with a little washing soda.
Thanks, Matt. W2MDG on the OMARC Sunday Night Science and Technology Net. There's definitely different levels, here that we can talk about. But you brought up a couple of good words in your descriptions tonight. Molecular bonds, that's a big thing. You mentioned surfactants, which is part of how detergents work. That's only part of it, but it's an interesting thing, and we'll get into that a little bit. So let's see. Shane, KD2YRB. Is it possible to over clean something? Are there things we can use that work too well?
Thanks, Neil. Yeah, I believe so. I've had an experience to where cleaning fire trucks using both Simple Green and Purple Power. Simple Green, of course, being biodegradable and safer for the environment, not as aggressive. Versus Purple Power, let me drop. Purple Power is much more aggressive and will take a finish off of compartments inside, and will weaken paint, in my experience. I don't know exactly the reason. I would guess that Purple Power, just for example, nothing against the product, it's a great product, but has maybe more acidity. Yeah, I believe that you can clean something too much. You definitely should use the right stuff for what you're trying to clean, because the wrong stuff could clean too far, if that makes any sense. Back to net, KD2YRB.
Oh, thanks, Shane. That's perfect. And the answers to that question go in two different directions, and you definitely went in one of them. Cleaners, some detergents, soaps could have a caustic component. And we'll get into the mechanical part of that in a minute, but I mean chemically. And obviously, there are things in the world, in industry, that can only be cleaned with acid. You know, and there are things we're not going to clean with acid. You know, you're going to wash your salad before you make your salad. You're not going to dip it in hydrofluoric acid or something like that. It's not necessary. It's just going to destroy whatever you have in the first place. But yeah, there are definitely cleaners that are overly caustic and aren't going to be good on certain materials. And that's actually where you sometimes have to do a lot of label reading and know whatever you're cleaning and know what it's made of or what it's coated with. The other direction you can go in with this is the biological side of it. Can things be too clean? And yes, definitely. We've realized now that by creating too clean an environment, that we don't build up a resistance to some of the things that we're cleaning, and also that certain things fight other things. This happens, with your own body. If you kill off your good bacteria, sometimes you have other things that'll grow that the bacteria kind of keeps away. And that can happen with a lot of things. That's why they always recommend that we eat things like yogurt or consume things with some living biologicals in them, like raw sauerkraut or refrigerated pickles, as opposed to the ones that are cooked. Or a great one is kimchi or kombucha, the drink. All these things that contain biologicals that are good for our body. They add to what they call the natural flora in your body. And if you make yourself too clean, you can have all kinds of nasty things happen. So that's another way to go with that. Well, thanks for the answers there. Lou, you're up next. Let's talk about mechanically cleaning something and what's the good and the bad of that.
Thank you, Neil. I guess you would leave the mechanical one to me, right? Interesting part. Yeah, over the years, and as far as I get my experience, well, anyway, I've worked cars too, but aircrafts and stuff like that. A lot of the cleaning solutions have evolved because over the years they found out that some of these cleaning solutions were very harmful to people's nervous systems and their bodies and stuff. If I remember when I was in high school, my propeller teacher, I don't know what disease he had, but I know that I guess must have been when he was in the service or what he worked at before he became a teacher. Let me just reset. It affected his, I guess the jelly or whatever the matter is between the spinal cord disc and his back, and basically you could take your finger and just push him over and knock him down. So he walked a certain way. It's not funny, but you as a teenager you see it and you think, wow, man, that's not gonna happen to me. But over the years, as you get involved in cleaning parts and stuff like that, or especially airplanes, cars, and stuff like that, you deal with a lot of chemicals and stuff that you eventually do find out that, or hopefully you won't find out that it did damage to you, but they come down over the years and they do damage to the human body. I think I remember one of the ones they used to use a lot was that same stuff they used to that one time used for dry cleaning fluid that was that time, a lot of people were already getting sick about it. But yeah, I think you know, a lot of regulations with OSHA and stuff have come into play. Where let me just reset. That they found over the years, asbestos was actually a big one. I remember with not just Clean Solution, but asbestos was another one that was a big deal on airplanes. They were using asbestos on a lot of equipment on the edges because of the heat. And later on found out that, hey, you can't get this stuff in your lungs. It's going to kill you. But going back to cleaning stuff, yeah, it's there was a lot of stuff we used to use for lubricants and stuff that are no longer allowed. There was a big one, and sometimes it was just making that stuff airborne. A lot of people used to like to spray a lot of things, and once it became airborne, anybody in the area that was walking by was back to using the K2 TVS.
All right, thanks, Lou. And you know, it's interesting that when we just want to clean things regularly and stuff that just still works very well, the mechanics of cleaning something, the most simple form of cleaner, which was discovered, is just soap. And basic soaps, which, oh God, there's no end of people making their own now. If you go to craft fairs or any of these flea markets, there's, multitudes of soap vendors. Some of these people make really, really nice stuff. But the idea of soap, animal or vegetable fats with lye, cured over a long period of time, it does work. There are other types of soaps, just glycerin-based and synthetic soaps, but the old-fashioned way of making it still produces something that works. Detergents are a little different. There's been a lot of technology in that over the years. Some of it actually bad. They outlawed detergents that had phosphorus in them because they were poisoning the waters. But now, we have a lot more modern detergents now that are more plant-based. And it's that word that Matt used, surfactants. You'll hear that word a lot because that's one of the ways that these things work. The other thing I mentioned when I asked about mechanical cleaning W2NDG on the OMARC Sunday Night Science and Technology Net. Mechanically cleaning something, let's say, using an abrasive on it. Something as radical as steel wool or a wire brush or a wire wheel on a lathe or a drill. That's, really pretty far in that direction. There are things, we used to call scouring agents, powders, that you shook out of a can and used a sponge, and they're, abrasive. You're grinding the surface of something. And the trick was hoping that the surface that you were attacking with this was harder than what you were attacking it with. So it's only going to scour or grind off whatever isn't supposed to be there. It's kind of like the, what scratches glass, our snow scrapers, ice scrapers that we use in the winter are made of plastic. But there was a company for a while that was making them out of brass. And it was because brass wouldn't scratch the glass. It wasn't as hard. But we know that there are metals, and of course, the diamond. Everybody knows a diamond will scratch glass. It's one of the tests to know if it's actually a diamond. You have to think of the same thing when you're dealing with abrasives. So that's why, we don't go to town on the kitchen sink with steel wool all the time. But there are scouring agents that are not as hard as the porcelain in your kitchen sink or the stainless steel. Technology has produced really advanced abrasives. 3M has always been a champion in that department with synthetic abrasives, and there are some really neat things that are abrasive for a temporary period if you're using them with water, and they're actually water soluble enough that they're only abrasive for a short period of time, and then they just become a cleaner. There's all sorts of really cool tech that's come out in this. And I have a question that combines two of these things. We'll see if anybody else wants to check in first. If there's anybody else out there, give me your call sign, your name, and your location.
W2GIO, Frank and Fish Patch. This is Co2 MNR, Mike is 50.
All right, thanks. I have Frank, W2GIO, and Mike, KD2MNR. Frank in Fish Patch. So, you know, in my Radio Shack days, a very long time ago, one of my friends was running two stores at the same time because he was supposed to be moved, and the guy who was taking over his old store got delayed coming in from across the country. So for about 2 weeks, he was running two Radio Shack stores as manager, and it was New Paltz and Fishkill, and he would get so mixed up as to where he was that he just started answering the phone, Radio Shack Fish Paltz, and that's what I always called Fishkill for years, Fish Paltz. So, Frank, the subject tonight is just cleaning, clean, dirty, soap, detergents, how they work, and what I was getting into was I was talking about mechanically cleaning things with abrasives. There's a lot of cleaning that can be done if what we're trying to get rid of is water soluble. But is there a type of cleaning that combines those two things, mechanical cleaning and water solubility? I'm wondering if you know where I'm going with that.
Oh, sure. At IBM, we in the one of the FA groups, they had this thing called the CO2 Clean Tool. And what it did is it's combined compressed air, that is moisture-free compressed air, with CO2, and it would create these really, really tiny ice particles of CO2. And that was the abrasive, and it was used to clean off sediment that would end up being on a wafer after it was being diced. So what's neat about it is it just disappears. It's carbon dioxide and air, and but it comes out as snow. So it's a CO2 clean tool. It's not expensive, but you need a bottle of CO2 and good air. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's really cool. And that's why I love getting people on here who can contribute things like that to the conversation. I was thinking of something much simpler, which is high pressure cleaning with water. But that is really cool. And, those of you like me who are recent inductee into pressure washing have found out that if you turn the thing way up and the nozzle is too fine, you could do some serious damage with that thing. But, that's really cool. And it's, I'm thinking there's probably other interesting applications for that. I know I spent a lot of time in the dental industry dealing with equipment and supplies. And one of the things that they use for cleaning in dentistry is basically a sandblaster. But instead of blasting your teeth with sand, they're blasting your teeth with super refined bicarbonate soda or baking powder. And what's neat about that stuff is it does dissolve eventually. There's one of those abrasives that's only temporary. But let me just throw it back to Frank for comment.
I'm back.
Yeah, I don't have any more information. I did use the tool myself, and it does work. And again, we were just cleaning little tiny chips, and the only problem was holding the chip so it didn't get blown away. It took a little bit of a jig setup to do that, but I had a special purpose, and fortunately had access to the tool. So yeah, I bet you could do things like cleaning clocks. You know, if somebody's got an old clock and you want to clean it, that would be probably a really good tool to use for a mechanism like that. So anyhow, I'll just be a listening. W2GIO. Wait, checking.
Oh, that's CJ. Thanks, CJ. Yeah, Frank, you gotta watch what you call it, I guess, because yeah, most of the time cleaning someone's clock means something else. All right, and Jim, I did hear you. I'll throw it to you once I get through the check-ins here, and you can give us some comments on what so far. Mike, KD2MNR. I'm running out of things to talk about. No, I'm running out of questions, but of any of the things that you may have heard so far, we were talking about soap, detergents, what clean dirt actually means, which was one of the questions. Can something be too clean? I asked Lou about mechanical cleaning, which I went on to talk about abrasives. And Frank gave us a really, really cool combination of abrasives and water solubility in the form of frozen CO2. So I'll just ask for general comments at this point, Mike.
Well, back in my excavation days with Gleason, we used, there's a sleeve that would go around the pipe. If you had like a water main break or something, you could actually freeze the water with this sleeve. It went over the pipe, and you pumped CO2 into it. And frost would build up on the sleeve, and eventually the water would freeze inside the pipe. Then you could, the pressure would stop. You could fix the pipe, and then you just take the sleeve off and wait for the ice to melt. The other thing, what? It was the whole CO2 thing. Anyway, let me drop for a second. You check in. You talk about stuff. Anyway, the pressure washer. Yes. If you crank it way up with the red tip, that does damage. You can take paint off of a car. You can splinter wood. All kinds of bad stuff. And the final thing, drop. I had a 1967 Camaro that the paint was very, very, very oxidized. So I washed the car, and then once it was dry, I took this stuff. I forget who makes it, but it's like it was a green can. It was a metal canister, like a car wax type stuff, but it was polishing compound. There's a green can and there's a red can. The red can is the it's not polishing, it's rubbing compound. I used the polishing compound on that car, and it came out looking like brand new. Now it comes in a plastic container, and they must have changed the formula to be more environmentally friendly and all that, and it does not work. So anybody that needs to do any polishing compound on your car, you're better off to wet sand it and go with that with a very, very fine sandpaper, because this stuff that I have, it just doesn't work. So that's about it for me. I'm going to be a one and done meal, but I'll be listening. So I'll turn it back to you. KD2. No.
All right, thanks, Mike. And you made me think of something else here, is that you can actually clean with ice, and not in the way that Frank was saying. So if you apply water to something and freeze it, dirt particles or things that aren't meant to be on the surface that you're freezing on will stick to the ice. And if you can separate those things, you can get a really interesting end result out of that. One of the problems has to do with surface tension of water and cohesion. So if you do something to affect the surface tension of water, which is another thing that makes some of this stuff work, you'll trap more dirt in the ice, but it also makes it really, really hard to separate the two. And the trick is to find something that removes the surface tension that also acts as a separating media in that case, and doesn't leave a film that's dangerous or worse than the dirt you were trying to remove. It's an interesting way of looking at it. Mike also mentioned things that we used to clean with that might not be allowed anymore. And I remember I had a chemistry teacher in high school who talked about how they used to use carbon tetrachloride to clean a lot of things, and can't anymore. There's a number of other things that can't be used anymore, but carbon tet was a pretty nasty one. It really had a bad effect on people, so they don't use it anymore. So anyway, let's see. We have CJ, KD2IIN, and Jim. I'll give you the wrap up. So let's go to CJ, KD2IIN, and you've heard what we're talking about. Anything else you want to add to all of this?
Indeed. Interesting conversation. Let's see, the pressure washing thing. Yep, absolutely. Also, sandblasting is another version of that. And then there's a version of that with pressure washing and injecting sand into that stream. You can both clean and cut with that. Speaking of cutting with pressure washers, my brother had just gotten a pet pressure washer back when I was a teenager, and I would work with him after school and weekends and that kind of thing on his painting business. And we got a job built in a deck, and there was this hill that was in the way, and he was trying to figure out how to get rid of the hill. Well, I took the pressure washer and cut the soil into blocks, and then we just scooped it out and hauled it away. So excellent cutting tool as well. I will warn you, it's a mighty job. What else? Let's see. Cleaning. Interesting you mentioned cleaning with CO2. I've heard of that or come across that with the small crystals. Let me drop for a sec. CO2 is often also used as a chemical cleaning agent. One that has developed in the last 10 years or so is using CO2, liquid CO2, as a cleaning agent to strip cannabis compounds out of raw cannabis to make things like essential oils and cannabis concentrates. Basically, liquid CO2 through a container filled with cannabis and a mesh screen, and the CO2 comes out and dumps the cannabis in the CO2, and the CO2 evaporates and leaves behind strictly cannabis extracts. So that's another version of chemical cleaning, actually sort of combined with mechanical cleaning. And so I won't give a dissertation, so I'll just put it back in that control. KD2.
No, that's fine. I'll make two comments on the sandblasting. My brother has one of these big, step-up glove box bead blasters, which, you can use sand in those, glass beads, or if you're cleaning something that's fragile, they'll blast the surface with basically chopped walnut shells, which is an interesting operation. He's actually done that on alloy wheels or other fragile parts you don't want to get too abrasive with when he's doing car work. The other thing I thought I'd mention when you're talking about the separating of chemical compounds using something like the CO2, I'm pretty sure the water principle of creating decaf coffee is similar. That's how it works. It's what they're doing. So it's probably technology. It's been with us for quite a while. Anyway, so we've been through all of this stuff, and I'm going to throw it over to my co-host, who's here now, Jim, and let him input anything or ask any questions on stuff you might have missed. But Jim, this is probably a subject you have a lot to say about, so I'll let you go with it.
Thanks, Neil. Good evening, everybody. Sorry I'm late. We had a phone call came in with some family matters that I had to take care of. So I missed pretty much everything up until the point of where I chimed in and said I'm here. So, but sounds like an interesting topic tonight. Sorry I missed so much of it, but basically they say beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Well, that works for dirt too. Depends on what you're doing as to what's clean and what's dirty. I mean, Mike, when he climbs into that triaxle, he delivers dirt by the tons at a time. And if you're making computer chips and a chip fab machine, with the finest microscope, if you can see anything whatsoever, that is too much dirt. They are painting with a brush that is so fine that white light is too coarse. They can't get the resolution they need. They are using extreme ultraviolet to get the wavelengths down fine enough. So you can imagine dirt particles in the magnitude of angstroms is catastrophic. So everything in between. It's all relative to what you're doing. I mean, like food. Drop something on the floor. There's a 5-second rule. Well, okay. But we had an interesting exception. When my kids were small, we had a little 35-pound mutt that was rescue when she was half starved. And come mealtime, she would sit under the table. And if the kids managed to drop something, it never hit the floor. The dog was that quick. So we never had a 5-second rule. But anyhow, all different kinds of ways of doing it. It depends on whether the contamination is dirt or oxides, whatever. Is it water soluble? Is it alcohol soluble? Is it acid soluble? It's basically application specific. Let me drop a second. So now let's talk water heaters. Contamination or dirt in the water heaters is in the realm of calcium, magnesium, various different salts that will attack the liner of the tank. They're glass lined, but eventually they will crack through the thermal expansion contraction and expose the steel of the liner. And galvanic action will start to attack the tank and create it to leak. So you have something called a sacrificial anode. There's a nut on the top of your hot water tank, and underneath that nut is a zinc or aluminum or magnesium rod that goes all the way down to the bottom of the tank. And the theory is that whatever contamination or dirt is in the water that reacts with the oxygen in the water will attack that rod first. And then when the rod is totally depleted, then it'll start to attack whatever failures you have in the tank. And so that rod is replaceable, although nobody ever does, but it is doable. And you can extend the life of your hot water tank, removing that contamination. When you're talking about chip manufacturing facilities, let me drop again. A lot of them depend on introduction of certain ultra-pure gases or mixtures of gases, and they go through valves and stainless steel tubing and so forth and so on. Well, this tubing has to be cleaned, and you can't just run some sandpaper down through the middle of it or something like that. They do something called Electro Polish. They put an electrode down through the center of the stainless steel and some sort of a medium, and they basically reverse plates. So any oxides or contamination or whatever is electrically removed from the surface of the stainless steel. And it's what's called electropolished. And at that point it is ultra clean and certifiable so that it's clean enough to provide gases to make the chips and not contaminate something down to the angstrom level. And we could go on from there for a lot more. Neil, did I double anything? Did I miss anything? What's going on, K2BHM?
No, not at all. You added a couple, and I added one that I thought about while you were talking too. So, a couple cleaning methods. I drew the line at disinfecting and sterilizing. We didn't want to get into biologicals, although some of the processes, even the most simple ones like soap, do take care of some of that. I didn't want to go that far, but that's fine. We had some interesting stuff. Matt mentioned, the basics when I was just asking questions about, how things work or definitions on the first round. And Matt mentioned molecular bonds and surfactant, which are two really important ways that soap and detergents work. Frank mentioned a method of frozen CO2 sandblasting, basically, almost like a cross between sandblasting and pressure washing that they used for the wafers in chip manufacturing. So similar to something you were referring to. And there's definitely a bunch of other things. So I'll list the different cleaning methods we've covered, and then the few that were brought up between you and I at the end here. But I talked about water cleaning or pressure washing or just things that are water soluble, because pressure washing also borders on mechanical cleaning, which would be abrasives, things like sandpaper or scouring powder, or more technologically advanced abrasives. I mentioned just plain old soap, detergent, which they are different, but basically accomplish the same thing, just using different methods, or at least different technologies using really the same mechanics. We discussed things that were caustic, acidic cleaning, things that are actually burning a surface. And then the one you mentioned is really a subset of that, which is solvents, where you're not necessarily using acid, but using something that what you're trying to clean will actually dissolve in. And because you mentioned other things other than water soluble things, yes, alcohol soluble or other things that can dissolve something without causing damage. Let me drop. You mentioned electrical cleaning, really, or electrolysis, reverse plating, which is what that is. And if you ever watch some of these restoration videos on YouTube where a guy takes an old piece of mechanical equipment and restores it, that's one of the things that they do in the process. They'll reverse electroplate it to get whatever the oxidation is off of it. And then while you were talking, I thought of one more, which is sound, ultrasonics. You can clean things with sound. And usually it's done with a transfer medium, usually a solution, which is also a detergent, but you can use just water. And if you put water into a chamber and vibrate it at ultrasonic frequencies, that mechanical vibration gets transferred to whatever is in that water bath and will vibrate dirt and particles right off of it. When you combine that with a detergent or a solvent, it works really, really, really well. And this is what's used in medical, dental, podiatry fields, veterinary, to pre-clean things before they're sterilized. Because it is possible to sterilize something that's still dirty, and you can actually still have biologicals under the dirt. Sounds like the beginning of a song. Anyway, so that's what we covered so far. Jim, back to you.
Yeah, okay, yep. Used a lot of ultrasonic cleaners in the past, also good for jewelry. And yeah, you mentioned carbon tetrachloride in the past. That is intensely frowned upon because of its intense carcinogenic properties. We used to use Freon TF and a lot of similar Freon toner cleaners in the past that had silicone oil built in to lubricate the contacts and so forth, and they're all banned now because of the ozone layer. Yeah, lots of different techniques over the years have come and gone. But let's see, what else? Why don't we take it around a little bit and maybe something else will pop into mind. K2BHM.
No, that's fine. And I'm actually, because I don't want to run too late tonight, I think we'll do another round here. And this is just, open, whatever you want to talk about based on what we have talked about already. But I'll throw one thing in here because I said I would mention it. How does soap actually work? And detergents? And basically, it's a combination of two mechanical, chemical things that are going on. One is that the molecular makeup of soap and modern detergents is such that one end of the molecule attracts fatty acids and substances other than water, but repel water, and the other end of that molecule is hydrophilic, or loving water or attracted to water. So basically you have a molecule that's latching on to oils and the things that collect in them. And because the surfactant end of it makes it hydrophilic, it will rinse away when you put more water to it. So you're basically attracting dirt with this molecule and then removing the surface tension and attracting more water to it by doing that so you can rinse it away, if that makes sense. When we mentioned surfactants, which is a way of making a liquid more hydrophilic or more wettable. When you add a surfactant to water, it removes its surface tension, at least to a certain degree, and makes water wetter, if that makes sense. But it's true, and there are, I'll give you an example. There's an additive you can put in your coolant, your antifreeze in your car, that takes away more of the surface tension in it, that makes it less likely to leave little bubbles and cavities as it's flowing through your engine block. And a lot of racing technology uses additives like this in their coolant, and it actually does shave a few degrees off of the engine and makes the coolant work better because it's not creating gaps or voids as it's flowing into areas and corners and nooks and crannies in your engine. So that's how that stuff works. Let's see if there's anybody else who wants to get a last minute check-in before we do our final round. Well, that was weird. I unkeyed and we were halfway through an ID. Was that transmission okay?
Got most of it. I think you timed out and started beeping and then dropped.
Okay, that's fine. So I said let's take additional check-ins before we do a final 73 round here. Is there anybody else who wants to join us tonight?
I'll drop in and say hello. K2LD, Bob here.
All right. Good evening, Bob. And we're talking about cleaning things tonight and what it means for something to be clean or dirty and all the different chemical and mechanical and other ways that we clean things. So I don't know if you have comments on the subject or you were listening, but I'll throw you in at the end here.
Well, I only kind of signed on now, so I don't really know what the whole theme is, but I'll listen in for a little bit, and maybe I'll join you till the end.
All right, Bob, thanks for checking in. And let's run all the way back up to the top. And this is basically just, for the final round here, just comment on anything we've talked about or add to our list of cleaning methods or comment on one of them in particular. So that goes up to Paul, N3EYQ. Paul, are you still with us, or have the gentle sounds of FT8 put you to sleep?
I think I went this way. I'm trying to work this 13 colony stuff. But I'm here. Not much going on. I've been listening in for you. Have a good day.
That's fine, Paul. I only have 2 in the book so far, by the way. I've got 2 of the states on sideband, but I'll probably work on that for the next couple of days if they're still doing it. All right, Matt, KB2, GGF, your comments on everything you've heard, or give me one that I missed.
Oh, I've got 9. All right. Yeah. Thanks, Neil. KB2GGF. Yeah, I was just put in mind of the whole cleaning paradigm for good soldering, physically and chemically clean. And good cleaning usually involves both of those actions. So just commonality among all the methods, or the better methods. But I was also thinking quite often heat or flame is a way of cleaning something as well. So yeah, there's all kinds of methods. And again, radiation. Radiation can be considered a contaminant or a cleanser. So who knows? But very interesting subject, and very informative and interesting net. So thanks again, and 7-3s everyone. KB2 GGF. Back to net.
Well, thanks, Matt. And a couple of good things you brought in there. Yes, we do want to clean chemically and mechanically before soldering usually. Heat, I missed that one. Most of us probably have self-cleaning ovens. That's how that works. You're getting the surface inside of your oven so hot that anything on it that's not the high heat surface turns to ash, and then you just wipe it out. Radiation, usually used for biologicals, basically killing things that could kill us. But enough radiation will definitely clean something, but it'll obliterate everything else around it and make it unusable. So, but those are a couple that I missed. So thanks for those. All right, Matt, and on to Shane, KD2YRB.
Thank you, Neil. Yeah, really, really good topic. To add to what Jim was saying about the water heaters, and antifreeze is used to, our RV antifreeze is used to winterize RVs, and they say do not put them in your water heater, your RV water heater, because it will attack the heating element in the water heater. And of course, I'm sure, like Jim said, over time, once the heating element is compromised, I'm sure it'll start working on the tank liner, or the outside of the tank as well, the tank walls. And also hand sanitizer. I'm sure we're all very familiar with it. They say too much hand sanitizer is no good, because it's, I guess, kills the good bacteria on your hands, as well as the bad. So everything in moderation, I suppose. But other than that, great topic. Very informative. And that's gonna do it for me. Everyone have a good 4th of July. Neil, thank you for running the net. And everyone have a good night. Back to net. KD2YRB 73.
All right, Shane, thanks. And a couple more good things there. I know one that I just thought of that it's not really a cleaner, but one that comes up sometimes in this topic is bleach. But bleach doesn't really clean. Bleach can be a disinfectant. Like I said, we weren't really getting into that aspect of cleaning tonight. But bleach is an oxidizing agent. And a lot of what it's doing is making things look clean, and it's making them clean with respect to biologicals. So that's why we use bleach in things like bathrooms and places where we don't want germs. But it does have a nice effect of making things look white again. And that's its oxidizing effect. So it does break chemical bonds, but it doesn't have the same effect as a detergent, which is usually why bathroom cleaners that have bleach in them are also detergents usually. You use a combination of the two. So cool stuff. Thanks for coming tonight, Shane. And we're on to Lou, KD2 TVS.
Thank you, Neil. And think about, you just mentioned bleach. One of the things that I switched from bleach was, and find way better is, and actually I think less expensive, is hydrogen peroxide. You can use hydrogen peroxide as a countertop cleaner. If you have a little mold that I guess like sometimes from damp bathrooms and stuff, you can actually wash that little specks of dark mold off with, that gets on your paint. Wash it off with hydrogen peroxide, and it's a very good cleaning agent, and not as harmful and toxic as Clorox is, I guess. And that's, you don't have that smell. If you ever try to clean something with Clorox, it's like crazy compared to hydrogen peroxide. It doesn't really smell like anything. Let me just reset. And we went over walnut shells and sandblasting, which is good, I guess, for removing paint and also cleaning rust off of a lot of things. Walnut shells, crushed walnut shells, a lot easier on components, especially metal that you don't want to really erode at with like with sand. The walnut shells are actually pretty good. And one that I've been thinking of is also, actually two of them there. You mentioned one about the ultrasonic cleaning. And I was very surprised at something that happened not too long ago. So let me just reset. Yeah, a buddy of mine that owns an automobile shop out in like East Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania. He retired way younger than I was, and wanted to dedicate more time to his shop. And in the process of all that, he actually acquired also, besides his automotive shop, he acquired a power equipment, lawnmowers, and all that type of power, lawn and power equipment, snowblowers and stuff. And one of the guys that actually used to work at the other place actually did pretty well for me. Came over, basically brought up all his clients from town over towards him, and they're busy like crazy. But one of the things that he showed me actually, and my buddy that I used to work with, he didn't believe it also in the beginning, but he uses an ultrasonic cleaner and for carburetors. He says that in most cases, which we all know, a lot of people leave stale gas, and it clogs up the passages on your little float bowl type little carburetors on lawnmowers and drive around lawnmowers and grass cutters and all that stuff. And he just basically takes the bowl off and removes the needle from the float, and he puts in ultrasonic cleaner with that specific chemical that they use, and it vibrates away. And I tell you, I was surprised to see it when I was there. I was actually getting some work done on my car, and seen that carburetor after it came out of that cleaner, and it was spotless. It was like a brand new carburetor, and basically air through it, and then put the needle and the float back on, and also clean the little aluminum bowl and all that stuff, and it's perfect. It runs. He said it's either going to work, and you save the money, save the customer the money on the new carburetor, but they still charge them, I guess, for, I forget what it was. We have a good price, and as far as for doing this stuff, but saves them money, but it makes them a lot of money, and as far as doing it, cleaning it instead of replacing it. Let me just read it again. And one of the other ones I thought about, for you guys that do reloading with firearms, reload your own ammo and stuff like that, they use tumblers that they for tumbling the casings and stuff, clean them up from all the excess powder residue and stuff like that. So that does usually a pretty good job. I guess I don't know if they use some specific media that they put in those tumblers and that it tumbles around with. But I know they use them for a lot of stuff besides just, casings and stuff. I think I remember seeing people using old coins and stuff like that, put them in tumblers and clean them up, and they come out pretty good. So, yeah, basically, and as far as what I had here is notes from adding on from hearing everybody talk about it. So back to you, Neil, KD2 TVS.
All right, Lou, thanks. I made a couple of notes here. You were talking about peroxide, and it's one of the things that I know it's come up in my life several times because I worked in the dental business, as I keep saying, is tooth bleaching and whitening. Once again, not really cleaning, but that's what most of those gels, or if you buy the special toothpastes that have the whitening agents added to them, you get prescribed them when you go to the dentist. They're using hydrogen peroxide or carbamide peroxide, which there's a lot of, or used to be at least years ago, a lot of controversy as to whether carbamide peroxide was something you wanted to really be putting into your body. But I don't think they ever outlawed it. The issue with that one is that it was considered a cosmetic and not a pharmaceutical, so it was regulated differently. And you were talking about other uses for ultrasonic cleaning. Yes, a couple of the companies we dealt with for the smaller ultrasonic cleaners for surgical and dental instruments made industrial ultrasonic cleaners, and basically the kind where they were built on site. They were that large, so you would install something the size of a bathtub or a hot tub or even bigger, and they would put together the thing on site and use it for cleaning very large things. So definitely interesting stuff, and we could keep going in multiple directions with it, but the industrial uses and needs for these technologies are huge. I made one other note here, I think before Lou took it, was when we talked about solvents and acids. Vinegar is an incredibly useful cleaning solution. It's and a lot of people will use it to clean tarnish off of metals. Take an old tarnished penny from before they were actually just copper-colored zinc, but go back to one of the older pennies that were brass-copper mixture, and soak it in vinegar overnight. See what it looks like in the morning. It's pretty cool. All right. Thanks, Lou. I know Mike said he was one and done. Frank, you said you were just listening, but I'll see if you have anything anyway. All right, that's fine. He did say he was just listening. So then it was CJ, KD2IIN. All right, you're up next.
K2IIN. Let's see. I wanted to comment. You mentioned how soaps work with the net, Neil. 73's K2. Aye.
All right. Thanks, CJ. And yeah, I wasn't aware of the other ways of removing the surface tension from water there or making it wetter, but that does make sense. And it's interesting that if laundromats are using technology like that, that would work really well. Modern laundry technology. This is one of those things that some of you know that Jill briefly went back to work for a large appliance company, and she's back out of that again. But one of the things a lot of people have trouble with these days when we talk about cleaning is modern washing machines. Manufacturers have changed washing technology drastically, and it uses much less water and much less soap. And one of the biggest problems the industry has had is that people don't seem to understand this and still try to use tons and tons of soap, and they don't understand why the clothes aren't, floating in a ton of water. One of the tricks is, moving it around better, and the other trick is washing it for a longer time. So people will complain that their modern washing machine doesn't get stuff as clean because they're using the speed cycle or turbo cycle because they're impatient. But if we don't want to use, so much water, which isn't good for a lot of us around here anyway, because our water systems can't really handle it that well, or we're using too much soap, it can actually cause things to not clean well. It's interesting. But yeah, modern washing machines, and I have one myself, and it's interesting to watch how they work now. Completely different than the old ones. Just they do things quite differently. So, all right, thanks, CJ. And Bob, now that you've heard everybody talk about this, and I've read my list of cleaning methods off, I'll throw it to you if you have anything to add. K2LD.
Thank you, Neil. Gotta say, I'm having a little bit of trouble focusing on the overall topic because there's so many different directions of everything that's going in. Not that it isn't interesting. It's always fun to listen to stuff like that, but I probably shouldn't have had that last bourbon at my brother's house for dinner before I came home because I'm just not focused. I went from a water heater in a chip factory to walnut hulls on reloading and ultrasonic with emulsion. Just very wide range. That's the ways about it. Very wide range. And emulsions also, of course, aren't just oil and water. They could be water and oil. They can flip. But as far as the carbamide peroxide, that is still currently in use in eardrops over the counter for removing wax. And my favorite cleaning mixture is just straight acetone. It seems to take everything off of everything and works very, very well. Can't overuse it. But that's about it. So I'll hand it back to Ned. K2LD.
Well, thanks, Bob. And I think bourbon could actually be used as a cleaning agent. So you're still on track here. You're still on track. All right, Bob. Thanks. And before I throw it over to Jim for a wrap up, is there anybody else who wants to join us at the end of the last round here? No? All right. Well, that's fine. And before I have Jim give us a wrap up from his point of view, I just want to mention again, because Jim may not have heard it, tonight will be the final Science and Technology Net, at least organized and streamed on YouTube until September 11th. We're going to take a break. But if anybody else wants to step up and come in at 8 p.m. on Sundays and talk about something, please let me know. I may attend as well, and I may email everybody through the OMARC Groups.io if we do have something pop up that we really want to or need to discuss. we can do that as well. But I would like to take the summer off. And September 11th would be right after our final large event that we're doing on Labor Day. So we'll be back here September 11th. All right, Jim, K2 BHM. This was like the adhesive night, as I said it would be. We went much further into this than I think anybody expected.
Yeah, K2BHM. To say you opened up a can of worms is an understatement. Yeah, acetone. Oh yeah, that'll take your nail polish off. Acetone, xylene, xylol, all these intensive chemical solvents. Yep, turpentine, whatever. They do a good job at cleaning on when it's off. And let's talk about getting rid of something before it happens. You talk about making water wetter. Jet dry or Calgon with sheeting action. If you let your dishes just dry normally, as it evaporates, the minerals that were in the water deposit themselves on the glasses and make that ugly spots and films and so forth. So Calgon with the sheeting action lets it run off and just dissipate, and you get sparkling clean glasses. But that's not a new thing. Back in the old days of the dark room with black and white, we had something called photo flow. You would dip your negatives in that as the last step, and it would make the water, like you say, wetter, and it would slide off, and it wouldn't dry and leave spots behind. So that predated Calgon with the sheeting action. Maybe that's where they got it from. Anyhow, yep, and they do use tumblers with crushed walnut shells to make your brass nice and sparkling and shiny and clean and ready to reload. Let me drop a second. And Bob, I heard that Coca-Cola is good for removing rust, but once you mix it with bourbon or Jack Daniels or rum or whatever, you don't want to waste it on something like that. So I don't know. I never got this right on rust. Anyhow, and what causes contamination? It was an interesting topic about popping your carburetor in a ultrasonic cleaner and get rid of all that oxide. Well, what caused it? Very simple. Ethanol in the gasoline. Ethanol is hygroscopic. Picks up all the moisture out of the air, and then you get the water into the carburetor, and it starts to oxidize the aluminum. You get aluminum oxide, and the little particles break off and go through and clog up the orifices, and your little weed eater stops eating weeds, and nobody's happy. And you got to take it apart and clean it out and try it again. So, moral of the story, use Stewart's Premium. No ethanol. Anyhow, tonight ramble enough. Neil, back to you, K2BHM.
No, that was fine. It was perfect. And when you mentioned jet dry, and there were also preventative surfactants, I'll mention this one and throw it back to you for comment. Tidy Ball.
Oh my God! But what do with the guy with the little rowboat inside my tank? That little tiny guy. He creeps me out.
So if you're removing that much surface tension from the water, which is how one of the ways Tidy Ball works, would he just sink?
I was wondering about that. I have no clue what floats his boat.
Oh, good one. Good one. I know CJ just had like 4 or 5 phrases pop into his head. Although earlier, and you probably missed it, when Frank was talking about the frozen CO2 cleaning, he said it was good for cleaning clocks. And I'm like, normally people don't want to have their clock cleaned. But anyway, all right. Thanks, Jim. Thanks for the wrap-ups. And I think we'll wrap things up ourselves.
Quick comment on cleaning clocks.
Go ahead.
My grandfather used to do that back when there were cuckoo clocks with the weights and stuff like that, or regular clocks when you had the pendulum swinging back and forth and so forth. And you would take some sort of a solvent like alcohol or whatever and clean all the dirt and so forth off of it. And what he would do is he would take a little bottle cap, like a beer bottle cap or something like that, whatever, and put it in the bottom of the box of the clock and put a few drops of kerosene in there. And the evaporation rate of the kerosene was enough to provide lubrication for the mechanism of the clock.
That's really cool. I wonder if you could have like a microscopic version of that for watches.
I don't know. If you could, Rolex would have done it.
W2NDG for ID. And yes, you're right. They probably would have. Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. And let's wrap things up. You have been listening to and or watching the Overlook Mountain Amateur Radio Club's Sunday Night Science and Technology Net. I am Neil, W2NDG from Highland, New York, and my co-host, Jim, K2BHM from Saugerties. And we are going to close the net tonight. And please, if you like what you hear on here, the Overlook Mountain Amateur Radio Club does not require you to be a member to participate in any of our activities, but we do encourage it. And you can find out more about the club by visiting omarcclub.org, omarcclub.org. And please join us for the other nets that occur on this repeater. In addition to this net, there are two daily nets. 8:35 a.m. in the morning is the 8:35 on the 8:05, a roundtable style net, and at 6:30 p.m. every day, the 6:30 check-in net, which is more of a directed net. Both of them are basically designed to keep people in touch. We want to know what you're up to, what you want to share. If you're having any problems, you need any assistance, discovered something important, or something to share with the rest of the ham community, or just community in general. Please join us at 8:35 a.m. or 6:30 p.m. Monday nights is the Undernet, Ulster and Northern Dutch Readiness Net, although I think they may have taken a break for the holidays. The Undernet is to demonstrate and instruct in readiness in the event of an emergency or something that we would need to use our radios for that would help the community. There are certainly plenty of things that can happen and have happened that radio has helped us through. And when a lot of other things don't work, it's good to know how to use your radios in place of your phones and other devices to help people and help yourself. Thursday nights, Dave, K2JLB, hosts the Thursday Night Technical Net, a net like this one, but more ham radio related. Dave usually looks for someone who has a troubleshooting problem or a ham radio question, and if that doesn't come in the first round, he'll come up with the topic for us. And that net is great and runs sometimes 4 or 5 or more rounds into the night. So please join us on Thursdays. I'll mention one net which occurs off of this repeater, and that's on Wednesdays at 5 p.m. Rotating cast of Hudson Valley hams, started by Paul, AC2UQ, and usually still run by Paul. We'll run the Hudson Valley 80-meter net on Wednesdays at 5 p.m., usually on 3835 or 3.835 megahertz in the 80-meter band at 5 p.m. If someone's already occupying the frequency, just look for them a few kilohertz away. But 3835, Wednesdays, 8 p.m. And once again, I am Neil, W2NDG from Highland, New York, closing the Overlook Mountain Amateur Radio Club's Science and Technology Net for this Sunday. And we'll see everybody back here regularly in September, and on and off if necessary, if something comes up. But everybody have a great summer and a great break, and we'll talk to everybody again. So enjoy, and I am closing the net now, 7-3. Have a good night. I'll hang out for a few minutes as always, but I'm going to end the YouTube stream now. Good night, all.